Hi, everybody. I'm back again, and I'm here with another fine maybe I'm here with another fine episode. I'm not sure. YouTube is being weird, so I'm hoping that everybody sees me okay. Yeah. So sorry I'm late, and on top of it all, as I was saying before, as I was saying last week, I wanted to go to reading 2 chapters a night. We're going to see how this works out because this first chapter that I'll be reading is a little bit longer than usual. So I'm not sure. And it turns out that I actually would need to read 3 chapters a night in order to finish this week. So we'll see because I still have math is doing horribly. Yeah, so basically, a week from today is the 30th. So, uh, and then Tuesday would be the 31st. So I could technically do those 2 days. So then, which technically would be 2 chapters a night would kind of get me through, and then there'd be like one night where I'm only gonna do one chapter, and then a couple of nights where I'm gonna do like 3 chapters. So it'll even itself out. Um, what I'll do is I'll start now. My name is Beth Wagner, and I am currently reading my dad's manuscript. I'm roughly about halfway through, so if this is your first time watching, I recommend going back to the first episode of this series, which is the Saga of Haram. Yes, the Saga of Haram. Anyway, um, yeah, and it's a fantasy novel. And when last we left our character, they were leaving the city. I think that's what it said. It was a little while. It was so Friday ago. Yeah, basically they left. They were starting to leave. They're getting ready to leave the city on their next adventure. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to lead into chapter 15 of 32 of the Sagam of Hera. Sagam? Keep on doing this all the time. The Saga of Haram. It's a day. It's a day. I will give you that. It's a day. Chapter 15. Before they left the city, Vorath dropped several silver ponies in Haram's hand. Haram looked up at him in surprise. A Falcaon took that scrap of copper to a man in the city. It was indeed part of the books of one of the books of Drumnadrum, and the fellow paid us 5 gold crowns for it. This is your share. Vorath waved away Haram's thanks. If not for you, the thing would have been tossed away. Our our sorceress partner is a little chagrined to think that he never thought to warn us of such a possibility. And everyone else is racking their brains to remember if they ever tossed aside such a worthless scrap of copper before. They traveled far in the next few weeks. Their luck, however, seemed to have completely turned around. They found nothing. Not an ogre, not a goblin, not even a werebeast plaguing some village where they might earn a day's keep hunting the creature down. 6 weeks, declared Tana one night around the campfire. 6 rotten weeks with not a bent copper piece to show for it. I tell you, Bora, this is the kind of thing to be expected you take on a god-hunted man as a this to be expected if you take on a god-hunted man as a member of the band. We've had stretches of bad luck that lasted as long before, Tano. You remember the winter we were forced to take on that job guarding the old Ferdaz's warehouse in Gon E Kef? What would you blame for that? Mock me if you will, Vorath, but I've said what I've said. Haram is a member of our band now. He has taken risks for us. He has fought for us, and He's been a good help to us in many ways. And because he did a noble deed by pulling a young maid out of the clutches of the god of lies of Shandakar, I refuse to believe that all gods have deserted us. What do you say, Afel, Kaon? You are more likely than any of us to have information on this matter. The maid shook his head. The doings of the gods are the doings of the gods, and not for men to sort out or regulate. It seems that, in general, they do not trespass on each other's territories, so that at a distance from Shandakar, Darhua will not likely have much power. One moment says that, however, one is forced to admit that things will happen to the contrary. The next most likely thing, however, is for Darha to send his hirelings against Harem. It is said that the goblins, for instance, while they don't actually revere Darha himself, might be willing to undertake a task for him. Then there are his human worshippers who might undertake a deed for his service. As for bad luck, though, I would venture to say it has little or nothing to do with Darha. You can't be certain, can you? Demanded Kano. Even you admitted that much. Certainty is not a word to use when speaking of the gods. I would, however, wager that our bad luck had nothing to do with Raha and his anger with Harem. Harem, for his part, discovered that he could not become truly part of the band. Though on occasion he though on occasion though he oh my goodness. Though he did on occasion take part in their banter and jesting, it seemed that there was some part of him that always held back. He was closest to Vorath, though even that was due more to the leader's persistence than any sort by but than any effort by Harem. It was Vorath who spent time practicing sword and shield work with Harem, aiding him to become more and more efficient. Harem never quite came to blows with Tano, but he knew what happened. He knew that whatever happened, the two of them would not likely become friends. Finally, they came upon the tracks of a band of goblins, at least 20 of them. Or I'm a horse-loving Shandakarian, said Tano. Harem looked at him. Was he likely making a dig at Harem, knowing that the leader of Harem's original band had been Shandakarian? Yes, likely so. In which case, the best response was to ignore him. 20, said Vorath half musingly. Could we catch up to them, do you think? Be like we could. And what would the five of us do against 20 goblins? Oh, we ought to be able to come up with some devious plan to even the odds. And we do need the money badly, don't we? What they did was a variant of the last tactic they had used on the large band of goblins, for which Mayor Trosso and his village still owed them money. Haram and Huarul rode into the goblin camp, as though blundering on them unawares. Haram volunteered to go alone, but Vorath had forbidden that. 20 is too many for a single person to hold off for any length of time. We need one more. And Hurul had nodded his head. So they came riding, apparently carelessly, into the camp of the goblins, who had been alerted by their own sentries. The goblins surged up around them, and Haram drew his sword. He remembered shouting, "May our ancestors be eaten by demons!" as a red haze descended over his eyes. When he came back to himself, he was seated against a rock with a bloodied sword in hand. The rest of the band were pillaging the goblins' belongings. Haram could count 15 dead goblins. The rest, apparently, had fled. Haram cleaned himself up as best he could and put his sword away. It occurred to him to wonder how many goblins he may have slain himself, but it was not something he greatly desired to know. And was not and particularly was not as the others were casting wary glances in. Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on. Let me try that again. Haram cleaned himself up as best he could and put his sword away. It occurred to him to wonder how many goblins he might have slain himself, but it was not something he greatly desired to know, and particularly not as the others were casting wary glances in his direction as they worked. For unfortunately, this band of goblins had been nearly as poor as Vorath's band. When everything had been added up, Vorath announced 5 silver ponies, along with 20 copper coins, and only 2 swords worth carrying to the nearest town for sale. "What is the nearest town to here?" asked Huerul. "I think it would be Halan. What do you say, mage?" "Yes, probably Halan. We're near to the coast where the strait separates Erdare from Rahasian." "Ha, the dark country. Do you feel a little sick, Afel Kan?" asked Tanyo. Oh my gosh, asked Tano. Afel Kayan shrugged. "I've wandered far, but perhaps it might be nice to go across the strait." "Well, we had considered fighting this dragon, but the news we get inland is so oft puffed up that one cannot tell if it is a mere dragon fight or a world-destroying monster." The fisherman laughed once more. Uh-oh, okay, I did this wrong. Oh yeah, skip the page. I'm so sorry, guys. "I have wandered far, but perhaps it might be nice to go home sometime." "That can wait, though." They sold the swords, and even all Borath's bargaining skills gained them little more than living expenses for a few days. The inn, known as the Albatross, was reasonably comfortable and inexpensive. The band decided to stay there for the night, while they still had the money to do so. Besides, it'll give us a chance to hear the gossip, to find out if times are more prosperous elsewhere for those in our trade. There was precious little gossip of interest to the venturers. The price of fish was down, the price of bread was up, the taxes were nigh more than a man could bear. Such were the great general themes of conversation in the common room of the inn that night. Some time later, the fisherman came over to their table. May I sit, sirs? Certainly. Borath did not look eager, Karen reflected. But then, in such a situation, an eager look could well be misconstrued, leading to a heavy charge for information sold. The fisherman was short, thick set, with yellow beard, though the hair was now somewhat crusted with salt from the sea. Large, strong hands were lying flat on the table. Belike ye have come for to fight the Drake of Bavarian? Ba- Bavian? That may be as it may be. The fisherman laughed. Aye, it may be as it may be, indeed, and belike I am trying in private matters. If you have come to fight the Drake, you will need transportation across the strait. Well, we had considered fighting this dragon, but the news we get inland is so oft puffed up that one cannot tell if it is a mere dragon we fight or a world-destroying monster. The fisherman laughed once more. Mere dragon, is it? I must remember that. What would you consider a mere dragon, friend? Before he answered, Vorath called to the innkeeper for more ale, including ale for the fisherman as well. What is your name? I am called Thraxus. And yourself? I am Vorath. Now, Thraxus, the stories we hear the stories we hear in the mainland have this drake the size of the grand palace of the king of Ifan with 8 heads. Some of the heads spit fire, some spit poison, and it can fight in all directions at once. This close to the situation, surely the news is more accurate. Thraxus threw back his head and guffawed, slapping his large hands on the table. The news grows a handspan for every footstep it travels, I say. Now you will understand, Vorath. I've not seen the beast myself, though I have seen some of the devastation it has caused. But from what I hear, the dragon has a body as long as 2 horses, with a neck and a half as long as that, and a tail larger than the body. It is winged, though it seems to fly seldom, and while it only has 1 head, it does breathe fire. Vorath nodded wisely, and all the members of the band looked on without expression. So, will you go fight the dragon? Vorath frowned. Has no one sought to fight it before? Some have, but none have been successful. Were these single warriors or in groups? Thorax shrugged. As to that, I could not say for certain, though they do say that it slew a captain and 10 men, and sent out by Vinu of Azwara. Vorth frowned again. So then, what would you charge to take us across the strait? 2 gold crowns for the lot of you, including the horses. Nay, nay, Thraxus. I did not offer to buy your boat, merely used for a short time. 1 copper each, including the horses. And if I take my time away from fishing, I will not I will not earn enough to make that up. 1 gold crown for the lot of you. The ending of it all, they all agreed, was to pay 1 silver pony each, with 2 coppers extra for each of the horses. After this had been done, Vorath said, If you excuse us, Thraxus, I must talk to my men. Immediately after Thraxus was out of earshot, Tano spoke. A dragon? Vorath, are you mad? Vorath shrugged. A little, perhaps, but consider. The dragon's size will have been increased by rumor, even as here. The dragon, therefore, according to The tale we have heard is a fairly small one. Being a dragon is likely a young one, which allows us a small advantage. As dragons get older, their hide becomes thicker and harder until the underside is as strong as a coat of chain and armor. The hide of a young one, on the other hand, may be well vulnerable to a well aimed blow anywhere. And even a young dragon will have treasure of some sort, more than we have seen so far. Look, all of you, one reason we've been suffering so long in poverty is that we are too cautious. We go out seeking fights which we know for certain that we can win. And what do we get? A hound full of silver ponies, if we are fortunate, with perhaps one or two swords which we can sell for a few ponies. Aye, I agree to that. Attack I and I agree. I agree that to attack a dragon is a risk. But the risk is, if worthwhile, there is a treasure to be had. A treasure by itself equals the sum of all the other treasures we've ever found. And certainly, some of us may die, but what of that? Do we continue to seek safe and easy battles, dooming ourselves to continual penury? Or one great battle, make ourselves rich? They were all silent for a while, even Tano, donning ourselves to continually. Whoops. But Tano finally spoke up. Have you ever fought a dragon, Vorath? I have. Have you? I have. Tano sat staring at the far wall of the inn, as though there was something pictured there. Something he did not like. Fighting a dragon is tricky business, even without 8 heads. It is. What of you others? Are you willing to make this attempt? Haram surreptitiously looked around at the others, wondering what their feelings were. He knew that for his own part, it seemed to make no matter. He may as well die fighting a dragon as anything else. Harul and Koron almost spoke as one. I will go with you, Varath. Afal Kaon nodded. As you say, the risk may be worthwhile. I will come. I will come as well, said Haram, suddenly realizing they were waiting for his response. Good then. Let's talk again to Thraxus, and let's see what is the best time for sailing. The land was desolate and wasted. They traveled past some remnants of houses and farms, burnt heaps of ashes and charred wood. They went through what had been forest, now blackened stumps standing up amid the ashes. In the open country, even the grass had suffered, the great areas of it being blackened and shriveled. As they traveled, they discussed the situation, what they had learned so far, and what tactics they might use. Tana was far from sanguine about the matter. I do not like this at all, Vorath. You see all this destruction? And we go to face the monster that caused it all. Indeed we do, Tano. And we do not go carelessly either. But consider, all this destruction is a result of years of work by the dragon, not mere days. Even so, the dragon has destroyed a captain and 10 men. We are only 6. Aye, that is true. But consider the habits of soldiers, Tano. Sorry. Their usual method is to go marching in to confront the enemy face to face and fight or die. That is not our plan. Aye, and what is our plan? So far, it seems our only plan is to ride in to find the dragon. Is that so much different than the way soldiers act? Boris shrugged. It is foolish to make plans until we know on the ground on which we have to fight. We know now that we are coming closer to the center of the land which the dragon claims. Once we lay of the land, we can make better plans. And while we are approaching him, suppose the drake comes flying over the ridge to approach us. Then we must make plans very quickly. By Tren and Viron, Tano, perhaps you ought not to have come with us. Tano gave a sour smile at that. And if I did not come, who would be there to pull your chestnuts out of the fire? So be it then. I will question no more. Only let us walk warily. They'd asked questions of the people in the surrounding area, but the stories of the dragon seemed so varied it was not really possible to achieve a proper description. Few of the people had actually seen the dragon, and those few still remembered it with terror, a terror which colored their narration. Vorth insisted that these descriptions upheld his own contention that this was a small dragon, and thus a very young one. As they went, they made tentative plans for most eventualities. The first and foremost being what to do if they found it in its lair. These plans consisted mostly of spreading out immediately, surrounding the monster if possible, and showering it with missiles while they advanced to sword distance. They had not considered a plan for what they should do if they rode over a hill and found the dragon below them, eating a sheep. The sheep must have been taken from somewhere outside its territory, but none of the band had seen it in flight. Had it perhaps brought the animal some hours ago, then lay down for a sleep before dining? They could not say. All they knew was that Vorath topped the hill. He suddenly held up a hand, then gestured for them to come, cautiously. Down below, the dragon was tearing at the sheep with large claws and sharp jaws. Vorath had been correct about its size. It had the body about the size of a horse, though a large one, and the tail was about twice that long, while its head and neck were half again the size of the length of the body. Its hide was green, ranging from dark green on the back to a bright green on the sides and a pale yellowish underneath. The claws were long, curved, and sharp. Ivory white where the blood of the sheep had not stained them, and rows of teeth in its long jaws were sharp and vicious. It was facing halfway from them, but Haram could tell from the movements of the head and neck that it could change directions quickly at need. Vorath apparently saw this as well, for he gave his orders and this quickly and in a low voice. Tano, Hurl, Koron, to my right, Haram, Afal Kaon, to my left. Ready bows. Haram readied his sling, though he was not at all certain how much good a rock would do in this case, no matter how hard it were thrown. Spread out and move. Don't you shoot until you have a clear shot, or unless it sees you first. Now go! They went down the slope, quickly and carefully. They were well within bow range from the top of the ridge, but the closer they came, the better it would be for them. Suddenly Haram saw the beast again turn his head and along the long snake-like neck. It was turning away from him, but in an instant it would be looking at Hurul and Koron. He gave a shout. He whirled his swing twice around his head and let go. The rock rebounded off the shoulder of the drake with the same sound as if it had hit a boulder. He dropped another stone in the sling and whirled it again. The dragon roared and set forth a blast of flame, missing Corin by a handspan, but causing him to flinch from the heat. Even as he whirled his sling, Haram was rushing down toward the dragon. He noticed as he went that the others had loosed their arrows, but the horses were unwilling to approach the monster closer. After that, he had no time to notice what anyone else was doing, for he was too busy fighting for his life. The drake used front legs, tail, and head and tail to fight with. It required great agility on the part of the men of Vorath's band to avoid being hit or trampled. One of the first things Haram noticed was as he came closer that an arrow was embedded in the dragon's shoulder, and his first thought was Vorath must have had been correct, and the beast's army was not fully proof against weapons. His second thought was that it was unfortunate that the arrow had not struck somewhere more vital. He approached the monster's side at a run, noticing out of the corner of one eye that the head was turning in his direction. He could thrust his sword home, but in the moment it would require to withdraw the blade. The dragon's jaws might well reach him. Instead, he took a slashing cut and danced back. It was rather like slashing at an oak tree. The sword opened a wound, but even Haram could tell that the wound was superficial. The great jaws opened and Haram dodged sideward, feeling the heat from the dragon's jaws as he moved. It was a long and difficult battle, and they discovered that so long as they stayed close to it, the dragon did not use its flame. For all that, it was dangerous. Not one of them escaped unscathed, scratched, gashed, or to some degree by the great claws. Once Haram found himself a little too far from the great green bulk and caught a blast of flame on his shield. The wood of the shield burst into flame and he tossed it aside, rushing forward. By that time, the dragon's attention had been claimed by one of the others, and Haram was unhurt save for some charred patches on his clothing where the flame had licked around his shield. So the battle went, constant leaping in to cut or thrust, evading the claws and the mighty swinging tail, and most of the jaws which could either bite or breathe flame. When the beast felt itself beginning to weaken, it tried to take to the air. Vorath shouted at his band to take to their bows again, and they did so. As the arrows pierced, oh my gosh, as the arrows pierced its tender underside, the drake turned back to strike at its tormentors. They dodged aside as it breathed flame, then closed again as it landed. There was no telling who had struck the killing blow. Indeed, for there may as well have been no single killing blow, only a cumulative effect of numerous blows, however it was. Numerous blows. However it was, the dragon suddenly roared once, then roared again weakly, then its massive head dropped forward toward the ground. Vorath stepped forward, raised his sword, and slashed off the neck. The head rolled free. Okay. So because it's Monday and had a really late start, I'm going to cut it short. Not short for you guys, but short for what I was planning to do because I was planning on reading 2. but I'm gonna do that the next night. So, uh, without further ado, I'm gonna let you all go, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow. So, have a good night.